So, Robert, how exactly did Robert Lang Studios get started? Could you share some of the history with me?
I've been doing this since 1994. Actually, let's back up. The 94 was the major renovation of the studio, but I've started in 1972 and was really rolling in 1974. So I went out and had a job at Boeing as a stainless steel welder on their hydropower program, and then started recording my friend's band, Cheeseburger Deluxe. So that was got me into like spending money that I received from Boeing on buying some microphones and tape recorders and such as like that. So just started recording the band up at Parker's up the road, and kind of developed into a hobby. And then I decided to go ahead and turn in my notice at Boeing, and then I started doing some work at K. Smith Studios here in Seattle in 1974, belonged to the Recording Institute of America program. And that's where I got my really start, because I would pick the instructor up, Peter Lewis, in the morning at Show, and we'd end up going to K. Smith Studios and being able to see the recordings like Tower Power, Bachman Turner Overdrive, and stuff like that. You know, before that, Daniel, I was out in front here in Richmond Beach, because you've seen the community here we live in. This was my paper route back when I was a little kid for the Seattle Times. So my dream was always to look up on the hillside, right? Because here's my paper route, right? 1960, 61, 62. And so I was dreaming about being able to, have a place here myself when I was growing up. And although my parents lived up the street a bit. So this is my native area here. And so it went from doing the live recordings in Seattle, then it went to being able to come in, and my friend wanted me to come and down and take a look at this double cement garage that he had in the hillside here. And I opened up the garage door. I looked in there and I went, "You got to be freaking kidding me, man. This is not going to work," because it was a 20 by 20, 7-foot ceiling concrete bunker, all right? And so I just thought to myself, well, I'm going to go out and look for another spot. And so I did, and only to find out that it was going to cost me an arm and a leg. And at this point, this was in 74, the summer of 74, I was on unemployment. And so I didn't have a bunch of money. I ended up, going up to Goodwill's, getting mattresses, getting egg cartons and putting egg cartons on mattresses, and filling out this double cement garage with just this stinged smell. It's like, forget it. So I ended up pulling all that shit out of there, went to the dump, and then I started then getting a lot of input from K. Smith Studios, which was at that time designed by Westlake Audio. And so they had this really cool look in their Studio A and Studio B. And to give you a little rundown in history of K. Smith Studios, they were owned by Danny Kaye and Les Smith, and they had brought the Mariners in 1976, so they had multi-millionaires. And they built one of the coolest studios, one of the top 10 in the world, here right in Seattle. And so again, like a lot of their clients, when they started, I think in 73, 74, they were doing Bachman Turner Overdrive, the Spinners, OJs, from Tom Bell, the producer, and they're doing Steve Miller and Tower Power. And so that was a pretty well-known thing. And so we got to the point to where I started building this down below here, and it started looking like a mini K. Smith Studio B. It was rather cool. I took some of their design in my head and kind of fabricated it. And, it was very small control room. You had to duck and pull the little door open and duck to get in it. And it was pretty small. But I was very fortunate to get involved with a fellow by the name of Doug Shower, who was a friend and worked for Greg Mackey. And Greg Mackey, of course, is Mackey Design Boards. Back in 1976, he moved out of his Mukilteo basement and got a place in Edmonds, which is a little town that's just north of us by about 3 miles. And so Greg and Doug Shower, they were like best friends. Doug was in the marketing. Greg was in the who Greg Mackey is. And then there's a fellow by the name of Rick Chin, who was a big part of my success here. So Rick was kind of the other side of Greg's mind. And so they ended up, had a company called Tapco, then which turned into Mackey. And I think it was 1978, I think Electric Voice bought them out, but they had a big thing going over in Redmond. So Greg provided me with a bunch of his mixing board. It was called the Catalina, and he had designed like an expander, but not really expander for inputs. It was an expander for, the studio section, headphone mixing and stuff like that, which he had like a semi-professional board on their way, which I helped consult with through Doug Shower and Rick Chin and all those people. So he would, tinker with, like a harmonizer. I think back then it was like a 910 harmonizer and lexicon stuff. He would have all this digital or almost digital analog stuff. And so he'd tinker with it. Then the next thing I knew it was in my hands. And, they had basically lent me a Atari 4-track recorder. I had in the past, I had like a TX 3340S. And, you couldn't get farther into doing any more than 2-3 generations without some type of noise reduction. And you're starting to lose the upfrontness of the recording. So I was very fortunate around 76, 77 to get myself into recording the Franklin High School Jazz Lab, which at that time I believe they went to London in 76, 77, Lucerne, Switzerland, and they were the #1 jazz ensemble in the world. And a lot of that was contributed to Kenny Gorelick, which we all know Kenny G. And so those days, it was like I remember Kenny's father dropping him off when he was 15 years old out in front here. And Kenny would open up his sax and, go down the scales, up and down the scales, which was really sensational because you could hear his soprano sax all over Richard Beats. And so it was really self-rewarding to be working with those guys. It was the whole rhythm tracks of the drums, bass, guitar, keyboards, and it was an experience. And from that there, Daniel, I pursued like a lot of funk bands from South Seattle, R&B stuff and funk bands. And pretty soon I, with Greg Mackey's gear and just stuff that I was doing, just kind of like really got me into where I am now. And it wasn't until 1980, 81 that I hooked up with Tom Bell's nephew, Leroy Bell, and Casey James, where I was recording a band called Bell and James. That was their offspring. And again, Leroy's uncle was Tom Bell, who had brought the Spinners and OJs into K. Smith Studios. So I was kind of now going down a cool vein of like real top musicians. And that led me into doing some stuff with Albert Collins' blues band from Texas. Albert, I think during the Sonic Highways, Dave Grohl's Sonic Highways, I think the Austin edition had something to do with Albert Collins in there, but he had passed on way before that, Dave did that. But going through the history here, it's, it was something where I decided, like, back when I was in that little small building, it's like 1981, it's time to excavate out the hillside. And right in 1979, while I lived across the street, the house where the little concrete building was came up for sale. And basically, I was married in 78 to Tina. And on our 1-year anniversary in 1979, July 16th, the property closed right to that date. So that's what got me really off the ground. And not to say that one of my friends left some money in the ground for me after he passed. We didn't know that was going to happen. Kind of when he left that presence of that rainbow package for me, and that initially enabled me to be able to excavate out, pour concrete walls, and kind of get to where I'm at right now. And it's been a lot of my other friends too.